G'day legends, I hope that you're all doing well. Now, I received some good news yesterday. I went back to my ENT doctor, my ear, nose and throat doctor, and he put the bloody thing down my nose to have a look at what is going on, and he said that I've healed up fairly well and that I can really get back to speaking using my voice as I normally would. That's very good news. I was very concerned there for a bit because I make my living off speaking, and I was concerned that, oh shit, what if my voice never gets better? But it has improved so much. Still gets tired through these videos, but thank you for sticking with me through the bad voice, through the very soft voice, and everything in between. So thank you for that. Now, today, we're going to have a look at some footage. We're going to talk about some nuclear weapons. We're going to talk about drones, of course, and a look at the maps and some movements on the front and some attacks that are going on. Now, one thing I do want to talk about is the SIPAC drone. This is the Australian-made drone that is basically known as the cardboard drone. Now, I have received some information on this as I've done some reaching out, and some people have reached out to me. Now, the main point to this is it's super cheap, really easy to modify, easy to make. So let's just have a look over some photographs here. So here we have the SIPAC drone. As we can see, they come flat packed like this and fold up using like industrial strength rubber bands and cardboard, things like this. And let's have a look at this graphic made as well. Mission-specific sensor, fuel payload configurations, allow the UAV to perform recon supply and strike missions. The wings are made of wax-coated cardboard and navigation. So you get the idea. It's said to have a combat radius of 120 kilometers. Now, this is where people have pointed at, were these actually used inside Russia? If this is what hit the Pskov air base, well, that's too far away from these to be fired from Ukraine. So they've been fired within Russia, most likely. And that is also what then the Russian pro-Ukrainian Russians have said as well here, and can be strapped on a warhead onto the front of that. We're going to look at more damage, of course, from Pskov airbase as well. But I actually received this off a source as well, talking about replicating them here. So this will look a little bit funny on screen. I'll see if I can fix this in any way. So, at a drone conference in June, Canberra this year, RPAS in Australian Skies 23, hosted by AOZ, Chief Engineer Ross Osborne. Now, he did message me back after this and say, I'm 90% sure it was this guy, but it was definitely a senior member from SIPAC, gave a press conference on their efforts in Ukraine. He detailed that following the initial granting of cardboard drones to Ukraine, the organic drone industry copied the relatively simple design and put it into production. The SIPAC cardboard drone is exceptionally cheap to produce. We know these are very cheap. So taking here that the Ukraine made their own organic drone from a copy of this relatively simple design, put that into production, and is now using, well, from this, potentially using that as well. And he did outline in another email saying that could we see Russia copy that as well, as it is a very simple cardboard rubber band drone. I know there's more in it than that, but it is a very simple, cheap design. We could see this pop up all around the world, and we're looking at, the Australian defence industry is looking at the simplicity of this, the cost benefit of this, and learning from this conflict and going, holy shit, well, this really works. Let's put this into practice in more other areas, or if we roll into a larger scale war. So let's look at some of the damage that these cardboard drones have actually done. Now, we've got some videos here. Now, first, we're going to look at then the cardboard drone. This video was released by the SBU here. So this is the target. You can see the Z, and you'll see this shader bit moving, which is then the drone. And bang, bang, there. And you can see then the shower of shrapnel then on the ground. Have a look here. So it's shaped downwards. Shrapnel then on the ground, and we go forward. There you can see better view of then the shrapnel, and then the inside GoPro footage of the damage. So you can see these pieces of shrapnel that have pierced through, and then you can see where they've circled the amount of shrapnel and damage here. Now, I think a lot of people in movies, you get this idea of big explosion and fire and stuff. When you first throw a grenade, you'll be like, oh, that's fucking lame. There's no fire. There's a bang, but it's all shrapnel. Shrapnel causes massive, massive damage. And let's see at the damage here as well. So this has only come out today, this IR video of an IL-76 at Pskov airbase of said to be one of these cardboard drones hitting this aircraft. Now you can see it hit just above the wing here and fly over from this reconnaissance drone again. And then much larger fire here under IR as well. So then we've got more updates on the damage. Now, one thing I do want to point out is where this strikes. So strikes then on the wing here. Strikes then on the wing here, similar positions. So then we'll look at some of the ones that are actually damaged, because there's 2 that are only damaged here as well, and have a look at this. So it's striked on to the rear sort of area on the wing here, and then on this second one, this is 2 different locations. They look similar, but if you look where then the tree lines line up and some other things, you can see that these are different aircraft positions. So then we can see, so just look at, say, where this position is here. These are different ones, but you can see they've struck in basically the exact same location. Now, we have more confirmation. So 2 were heavily damaged. We don't know what Russia's ability to actually rebuild these platforms is going to be. Some said they have no ability. Russia, we know, still make 2 or 3 of these a year, but it's still a $200 million loss. So then let's look at then the completely destroyed ones too. So we have this one here. So these are 3 other of the aircraft lining up on the apron. I don't know what you call it. And then here is, I believe, another one as well. So you can see the damage. The tail here is still somewhat together, and this one is completely damaged. Now, these may have been taken at different times, but we have confirmation that 2 aircraft were completely then destroyed. And you can see these then are the 2 that were damaged. So you can see where it's hit on the 2 wings as well right there. And then on the same graphic, we can see then where the 2 damaged are here and here. So you can see one has its tail somewhat together. Yeah, I know. And then this one together, just so you can differentiate which is then which. So has caused a lot of damage there. And really the first most public time we've actually seen these in motion. So back to what I was saying about that we're going to see more things like this. Is it somewhat skirts around some of maybe the restrictions on Western weapons being used inside Russia? So we've seen, for instance, Zelensky announce a new weapon, a new missile that is said to strike at 700 kilometers, which is about 430 miles, I think 434 or something. So we see it here, multiple stages you'll see break off. Bang, bang, there. So that greatly increases Ukraine's ability to strike within Russia. And we do know that both Budanov and Zelensky have said that they are going to increase strikes into Russia as well, that it is a fair target from there. And from what I posted in my Telegram, come and join the chaos, come and join the PMC, Willie's PMC, we're naming it, but that it is fair to target in there, and they need to hit those logistics hubs, to hit planes like this, and there's going to increase in that. So we're here. Reports of new attacks. We hear Russia saying they've shot down a lot too. So we do know that that is absolutely increasing there. So Zelensky, in an evening update, has said the results of our weapons, new Ukrainian weapons, are 700 kilometers. Now, I'd bet to say that these are being produced organically, but definitely with the help of private defense. Now, I've got no evidence to back that up, but I'm just saying that's how it will probably work. So somewhat negate some of these restrictions. If it's a company just coming in to help set up, go from there, then it can be used in there. I think we'll see more and more push to have organically produced Ukrainian weapons used so they can actually strike deeper too. So we see this, say, with BAE Systems saying that they're going to enter Ukraine to produce weapon systems, artillery, things like this as well, with Zelensky saying the development of our own weapon production is a top priority. And we've seen Rheinmetall over the past, say, 9 months also being very interested in local production. Now, many will say, why would private defense companies do this? This is a huge win-win for defense companies. If you're a defense company, the best time for you is a war. Like, that's when you sell the most amount of stuff. Go and look at the stock prices of any of these companies. War, great for business for them. So where do they win? Well, there's now huge grants from the West into Ukraine for weapons. Ukraine's absolute top priority is weapon production and the war. And Ukrainian labour is significantly cheaper than, say, German in Rheinmetall or British in BAE Systems to produce these two. Also going along drones, we see here a Ukrainian drone with a Russian helicopter then chasing it here. I'm just going to mute this because the audio, I don't know why they don't just add no audio or just the actual sound. The drone probably doesn't have any sound, but we see this Russian chopper chasing it here, engaging it with weapons, chasing the gun here. And it is said that this drone did get away unscathed. So this is the only bit of footage we have, this 18 seconds here. So we don't 100% know the fate here, but many are saying that they can't even take this down. So we see the gun engaged there. But I have seen a lot that are saying drones to take down are very, very difficult as well. Little electronic motor and can be bloody almost full of holes. So as well, Russia, for the first time, has put the RS-28 Sarmat, or the Western called Satan II ICBM, so Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, on combat duty. Now, a lot of the names you hear for things, we refer to it by like the Western name given to that weapon, not then the Russian name for it. So it's Sarmat, but we call it the Satan, and there's many other systems like this as well. So the Director General of Roscosmos, which Russian agency, Yuri Borisimov, has said the Sarmat strategic complex has been put on combat duty. Now, these are replacing the R-36M2 intercontinental ballistic missile, which have been in active service since 1988. Now, we don't know the exact specifics on this, so I'm going to give a range of some things. So each missile is said to be between 200 and 230 tons, which is fucking massive. So here we go. Here, this is just the silo it is now held in, this little truck under here. And can carry it to 10 to 15, and that's an argued point, 10 to 15 nuclear warheads. That number that's a range as well. So also it's said to have a range of 6,835 miles and is said to be designed specifically to evade air defense systems. Now, each warhead is arranged in multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles called MIRVs, which is what we see in ICBMs. So this basically means as it goes up at break and starts coming back down, then these individual warheads work independently of each other, meaning that it can hit a lot more targets at once. It's not just one target, but then air defense has to strike a number more things as well. And in some breakdowns of ICBMs, they may have 10 warheads, but they may have fake warheads in there too to confuse air defense. So if you really want to know how an ICBM actually works and why it's basically impossible to actually counter these sort of weapon systems, I'll put a video here somewhere. Go and watch that. It really breaks it down well in this like infographic-y thing. But this comes as we see more and more threats coming out of the Kremlin regarding such weapons of mass destruction. And Britain and the US have previously just dismissed such threats as, well, really empty saber rattling, as just empty threats. Now, Julian Lewis, the chair of the House of Commons Intelligence and Security Committee in the UK, has said Russia and the Western nuclear states have had the ability to annihilate each other ever since they acquired strategic nuclear bombs followed by the intercontinental ballistic missiles over 60 years ago. Putin adding this new missile to its pre-existing overkill capability makes absolutely no difference to the effectiveness of our Trident nuclear deterrent submarines. So, submarines, of course, deep under the ocean, fire nuclear weapons from subsurface and can hit basically anywhere in the world. Nuclear subs and nuclear armed submarines are an incredibly dangerous doomsday sort of weapon. Now, Defense Committee Deputy Chairman Alexei Zurilamov, that's what we're going to go with, has said, if the United States threatens our state, it's good. Here is a Sarmat for you. And there will be nuclear ashes from you if you think Russia should not exist. We can hit with a Sarmat from Siberia and even reach the UK. And if we strike from Kaliningrad, the hypersonic's reaching time is 200 seconds. So go ahead, guys. Now, there is good debate to be had that nuclear weapons have saved much more lives than they will ever take, basically due to their ultimate deterrence. So, as capable as they are sort of ultimately useless due to the mutually assured destruction. That if we fire one, we're getting one back. And if that happens, then 10 are coming. So it's basically the end of everything. It's just deterrent. But there's also a strong debate as to what the West's reaction would actually be if one of these weapons was used in Ukraine, either tactical or strategic size, a small one or a big weapon from there. What actually then would we do? But nuclear weapons are a very interesting part of a country's defense because does it have any offensive capability? Well, of course it does, and defensive as well. Will it ever be used? Probably not. And the reason why they've saved a lot of lives is you look at, like, say, World War II. Japan was not going to surrender. And the amount of Marines, the amount of civilians, everything that would have been killed on a ground invasion of Japan is assessed to be significantly more than those missiles used. But of course, those missiles used on complete civilian targets was a horrific thing as well. But if these weapons didn't exist, And my belief, if these weapons didn't exist, we would have no reason to not put troops on the ground in Ukraine. We've had no reason to have other wars around the world that would have gone on. So ultimately saving just more human cost too. So speaking of weapons as well, sources are saying that Ukraine launched 3 drone boats at the Kerch Bridge last night from the direction of then the Black Sea. Now, there are a lot of varying reports around this and a lot of Russian sources, so grain of salt again, but it's saying that there's been 3 engaged and 3 destroyed, and also 2 engaged and 1 turned back. But talking of strikes then against the Kerch Bridge as well. So we have this on the Intel MOD update from the Brits. The Kerch Strait is a bottleneck for military logistics support to Russian forces in occupied areas of Kherson and Zap Oblast. Russia is heavily reliant on the Crimean Bridge and ferries to the strait. So let's look at where we're actually looking. Of course, this is the Black Sea. This is the Sea of Azov. This is Crimea, Kherson, Zap in here too. So this we're talking is the bridge through here. So this needs to supply up in by train, by road, whatever, into Kherson and Zap Oblast as well. Now, I digress. Russia is employing a range of passive defences such as smoke generators and underwater barriers, alongside active defence measures such as air defence systems to strengthen the survivability of water crossings and minimise damage from future attacks. The bridge's importance for both logistics and symbolism of Russian Russian occupation mandates these extensive protection methods. As of the 29th of August 2023, imagery confirms Russia has created an underwater barrier of submerged ships and containment booms to deter against uncrewed surface vehicle, USV, so drone boats, kamikaze boats, attacks against the Crimean Bridge. At the southern part of the bridge, this includes several vessels 160 metres apart. These are located at the same place as the Ukrainian Sea Baby USV attacks on the 17th of July 2023. We know those Sea Babies carry a hell of a lot of bang, can do a lot of damage. Previously, in September 22, the Russian Navy briefly trialled radar decoys on barges for several days, likely to deter radar-seeking missiles. Other countermeasures to protect the bridge include the use of TDA-3 truck-mounted smoke generators with an exercise conducted on the 24th of May 23. This smoke was activated to deter incoming air threats on the 12th of August 23. So air threat coming in, you can't see where it is with that smoke. And we've actually seen traffic stopped on the bridge today, and we have seen previously smoke put over the bridge as a way of deterrence as well. So this bridge is very critical for the Russians in this area. And I'm actually very surprised we haven't seen more attempts actually on this bridge so far. We will at some point, but we know Ukraine is trialling underwater drones as well, like submarine drones, as well as success recently with the uncrewed drones on the surface as well. The thing is with the bridge, very strong structure to actually take out from a drone on the water. You need to hit the pylon somewhere, and I'm guessing where they've sunk these ships around it is protecting the pylon. So it's a very difficult bridge, very difficult area to take out. Bridges are very strong, as we've seen both Russia and Ukraine struggle to actually take out bridges through this entire war as well. So the Biden administration is now sending for the first time depleted uranium, so DU, armor-piercing shells into Ukraine. As we know, the first batch of 200 Ukrainian tankies for the Abrams tank for training actually finished then yesterday. Of course, these will come into the 120mm systems, which are on many of the tanks, the Western tanks, except for the Challenger 2, because the Charlie 2 is a rifled barrel, not a smoothbore. Now, Politico, has reported the first batch of Abrams will arrive in September, but they did also confirm that Ukraine will receive 10 in September of the 31 promised refurbished US Abrams tanks. Now, what effect will this actually have? Well, an Abrams, a modern Leopard, similar capability. Abrams is a big, heavy Western tank and was very, very successful in desert-type situations where some of the concern will be raised is in the mud, in the slop, in the snow. How will these actually perform as they are significantly heavier, bigger tank than the sort of Eastern other tanks that we see in these spaces as well? So there is some concern about how that will actually perform. But we know the Abrams is a good tank, but we know it is also a very old system as well. Tanks don't get developed, or main battle tanks don't get developed all that often. They're very expensive to replace as well. And there are so many varying reports from depleted uranium that it's completely harmless to that it's absolutely shocking for you. And also that it's only harmful for you once it disintegrates or as a dust, which in my opinion is you're probably worse off at that point. Like if you've got an area where you're inhaling DU dust and you're inside of a tank, I'll take the fucking poisoning over that Sabo round going through and through my tank. But most of the reports that I've found when I was actually looking into this a lot are from like government investigations, and as we know, the government would never bend the truth on substances used within the military at war. But it's also very important to note that there is much ongoing debate and research regarding the long-term health effects from depleted uranium exposure, and also the environmental factors of these depleted rounds in just the open too. Also, the Ukrainian foreign minister has told critics of Ukraine's counteroffensive against Russia to shut up. So we have this video here.
Of counteroffensive, criticizing the slow pace of counteroffensive equals to spitting into the face of Ukrainian soldier who sacrifices his life every day, moving forward and liberating 1 kilometer of Ukrainian soil after another. I would recommend all critics to shut up, come to Ukraine and try to liberate 1 square centimeter by themselves. Thank you.
So this is something, we see so many critics, and I say this all the time with all these critics, all these people that think they know what's going on. It's like, you've never signed that line. You're not prepared to go and do this. And I see these like super pro accounts who are, oh, fuck these orcs, this or that. I'm like, you're not fighting. You're sitting in your house in the States or Britain or Australia, whatever. Like, if you feel that strongly about this, why are you're not actually doing anything if you're just criticizing online? You know, if you're in the media, you know, this is a job. We criticize, look at bits and pieces. But so a lot of this just criticizing random shit. You're like, go and pick up a weapon and do it. And this is, I see this question asked a lot, and I actually think it's a fair question to people. Is like, if you feel this strongly about this and anti that, go and pick up a rifle and actually go and fight for them. And whether the super pro-Ukrainian, super pro-Russian side, especially in the West, well, I see very few of you actually picking up a weapon and being like, well, you know, I'm prepared to talk shit online, but I'm not prepared to actually go and do ghetto shit on the front line. So that's going to be forever just keyboard warriors too. So also speaking about Ukrainian officials, Ukrainian Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov will likely resign, and his position will be filled by the current head of the State Property Fund, the SPFU, Rustem Umarov. Now, Reznikov will move to Great Britain as Ukraine's ambassador. Now, this comes after a lot of rumours about Reznikov's resignation have been circulating since February 23, amongst a corruption scandal involving the Defence Ministry procurement of overpriced supplies for the armed forces, mainly being cold weather jackets that ended up being summer clothing at then more than 3 times the price. All right, so let's have a look at the maps and see what is going on. Of course, we have Ukraine in the center, the capital of Kyiv. The red area is occupied since 22 and the purple since 14. If you want to argue on the colors, maybe I'm colorblind. We've got Romania, Poland, Belarus, and Russia around here. Now, Belarus is claiming that Polish choppers breached their airspace today, as we saw that Poland said that Belarusian choppers breached their airspace a couple of weeks ago as well. So there's a lot going on. This border down here, or between Lithuania, Belarus, Poland, is a very hot point at the moment. It's really boiling up there. There's a lot of tension, but Lukashenko today did invite Poland to have a discussion with himself as well. Now, there's not that much happening on the map. The Ukraine Daily Map Update, the other map we normally refer to, does show no actual differences. So we see no differences around Kherson on any of the maps. Now we come into then Kyiv sector, the Robotyne area. We know there's a hell of a lot of fighting still happening here. Robotyne is being held by the Ukrainian side, but there's still a lot of fighting and counterattacks, whatever, in this area. We did see this breach almost down to Volbove 2 days ago, and we spoke. And what we see since then is we just see this push into Volbove, which we saw was that RICO team, which was that, and then where we see the front line pushing down to the south here, but no major changes, but breaching this front line, this first offensive line in one area here. So that was pushed through fairly quickly, but after more than 3 months of fighting in this area. So still a hell of a lot of fighting there. And we do see Ukraine is making slow but surely pushes down through this region as well. And let's have a look on some other maps here too. So I've got the Ukraine battle map, which I normally don't use, but we're going to today just for the lack of other maps. So we're going to have today's one on the right and yesterday's one on then the left. And let's get these similarly. So we can see Verbove. So this one definitely shows a lot more ground made by the Ukrainian forces here than the other maps do. So you can see how close into Verbove here as well, and this further push down south of more ground. So it really depends on what you're actually looking at. So let's have a look at a week ago's one from Rybar Russian sources, and then today's of Rybar's Russian sources map here as well. Oh, fuck. Here we go. Zoom, motherfucker. So here we have Robertini here into Verbove. And of course, these aren't perfect, but you can see that more ground is being confirmed around Robertini. This was, of course, before the exception of, they've accepted that Robertini has fallen, but not too much other differences in here, but a further push to the south and the east to there. So ISW, now the only difference between one 2 days ago and then this one is this slight bit of only claimed control here just to the north or west of Robertini, but the area in the south and the east is not showing any different in there either. Now, let's have a look at then Uruzani. We know there are a lot of attacks, counterattacks in this area, but we're not seeing any change here. That green only changes because the green is now area held for more than 2 weeks. But what we do see is Russia did make some ground around this region. So let's step back to when we saw Ukraine have this push down. So the 28th to 29th, Ukraine made more ground in this area, and then we've seen Russia take some back over the past 24 hours. So Russia has launched some level of successful offensive here too. Now the rest of the map up through Avdiivka through to Bakhmut does not show any difference, but we hear a lot of rumors about offensives to the south of Andrivka all the way down here to Dashny and Druzhba as well, where we did see Ukraine make some ground there, but not being shown on this map. But it's not showing any differences around that Bakhmut front. Now we come up into here, which is the sort of Dobrova front, well that's what I'll call it, maybe the Kremenar front, and we do see that Russia managed to get some ground there. So we see between the 31st and the 1st that Russia made some ground in this heavily wooded treed area. And this is where a lot of the footage we're seeing coming out that's really heavily wooded and treed comes from. But up the rest of the front line, there are no changes being shown. But there are still a lot of claims up in Kupiansk that there was large advancements. And Russian sources are claiming large advancements around this area, but there's been no geo-confirmed images or footage that actually has been released. So we just have to go with what it's there, but they're saying they've captured a lot of high points in this area too. So here we have what the Rybar is saying in this same area. So let's see if we can line this up somewhat. So Sinkivka is still said to be under Ukrainian control by Ukrainian sources, but by the Russian sources, they're saying that Sinkivka is now, or at least 50% under Russian control, which this is definitely then not showing here. So this whole area I'm very confused on because, well, it's not going to load my satellite map to have a look, but it is confusing because there's the rest of the maps between like the Rybar, Syriac, and Deep State ISW, daily map update. So we really use 5 or 6 maps on this channel. The rest of the areas are very similar. This Sinkivka Kupiansk front is completely different to each other on where it's actually lying, even between the Western sources and the Russian sources. It's very different as well. So it's very interesting what happened here. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in Sinkivka. So that's going to be interesting. Now let's see what Budanov has said about reserves as well in and around this region. So Ukrainian military intelligence GUI head Kirill Budanov reported that the Russian military deployed elements of newly created reserve army, the 25th CAA, to enable units currently on the front line in the Lugansk Oblast to laterally redeploy to defend against the Ukrainian counteroffensive in the south. Budanov said on August 31st that the Russian military deployed elements of the newly formed 25th Combined Arms Army, reportedly formed under the Eastern Military District to replace elements of the 41st Combined Arms Army, the Central Military District, in the Kupiansk region, and that these elements of the 41st Combined Arms Army began a slow redeployment to an unspecified area in southern Ukraine. So, Kupiansk area. This is where we see Russia have some success, well, at least being reported in, depending where you look. So, I'm saying is they're deploying reserves into this area where Russia seemed to have somewhat of the upper hand, and then moving them to an unspecified area in the south. Now, what someone like me would speculate is that they're putting in these guys in this region and are going to deploy reserves down into these other defensive works down here, where we're seeing Ukraine achieve strategic breakthroughs in some of these areas, both around Uluzani, still a long way off, but the line is a lot thinner here, or down from Tokmak here, because there are rumours that some of these defensive works aren't fully manned, or some would say manned at all. So there is going to be a shuffle of Russian personnel from there, from Ukraine's intelligence, from Burunov as well. We know Ukraine will be shuffling guys around too, and this war is going to be really won and lost on logistics, and at the end of the day, manpower and men on the front line fighting, and that's why I never celebrate war and young people dying. Legends. I hope you have a really great day. I hope you're having a great weekend. Happy Father's Day for all the dads and the daddies out there for tomorrow. If you'd like to support me, there's links down below, but never, ever feel obliged. Look after yourselves. I hope you enjoy. Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.